What's going on, everybody? Welcome back and happy 25th anniversary to Bordello of Blood. Do me a favor before we get started. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and if you could, hit that bell notification so you don't miss out on any future videos. As well as a celebration for the 25th anniversary of Bordello of Blood. This is also a special occasion because it's another installment in my It Came From the 90s series. Doing a series for each year in the decade of the 90s. This kicks off episode 1 of It Came From 96. I'm going to be doing a series for each year of the 90s, 1990, all the way through 99. I've done videos for Death Becomes Her for It Came From 92. I've done Brain Scan for the first episode of 1994. And today's episode, Bordello of Blood, is episode 1 for It Came From 96. I'm going to keep this series rolling. I hope you guys enjoy it. Be sure and comment down below for your favorite 90s movie suggestions. Maybe I'll do an episode on it. But for now, let's get into today's video and the first episode of It Came From 96. And let's talk about Bordello of Blood. Bordello of Blood was directed by Gilbert Adler and stars Dennis Miller, Erica Alaniak, Angie Everhart, John Castor as the Crypt Keeper, Chris Sarandon as Reverend Current, Caleb Verdeau played by Corey Feldman. This movie was written and produced by A.L. Katz based on surprisingly original concept, story, and script by Bob Gale and Robert Zemeckis, who you may know from so many things. Like Robert Zemeckis wrote and directed Death Becomes Her, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Castaway, Back to the Future, all that stuff, and Tales from the Crypt. The series is also produced by Bob Zemeckis, and Bordello of Blood was based on an original script concept by Bob Gale and Bob Zemeckis way back when they were in film school. Bordello of Blood was released August 16th, 1996, 25 years ago today. Made $5.6 million at the box office on a budget $2.5 million. So when I saw that it was the 25th anniversary of Bordello of Blood, I could not let the day go by without making a video. So I rushed home, popped in the old Scream Factory DVD, and I listened to the commentary, which actually I hadn't had a chance to get to yet. And the commentary was great. I learned so much about this movie that I didn't know. We're going to get into all of that because there's so many issues with the production of this movie that I had no idea about. Revisiting this movie today, I can definitely see why 15-year-old me loved this movie so much. This movie is packed with so much blood, gore, boobs, and sex. It's what's not to love about Bordello of Blood. This is one of those movies that I used to just watch constantly. It used to be just on heavy rotation on HBO back in the day, which is how I consumed most of my horror back in the day. And it was so much fun to revisit this movie, and now I see why I was so enamored with this movie. This movie has absolutely everything a horror fan, young or old, could want. Boobs, gore, blood, and mayhem. What's not to love about Bordello of Blood? Sorry guys, apparently Pete wants to say hi. He is just staring holes into me from down below the camera. Do you want to say hi, Pete? Did you like Bordello of Blood? Pete's kind of a normie. He doesn't like horror movies. Did you like Bordello of Blood? No? Okay, buddy. Say hi. Say bye. All right. Bordello of Blood tells the story of Caleb and Catherine Verdeau, brother and sister. At the beginning of the movie, they get into this big blowout fight. Corey Feldman, who plays Caleb, storms out and he goes to blow off some steam with his buddies and ends up at a brothel trying to blow off his loads. It ends up actually being a lair for a bunch of blood-sucking, sex-crazed, topless vampires, which is awesome. Catherine ends up wondering where the hell her brother is. He goes missing. She hires a private detective played by the biggest douchebag of all time, Dennis Miller. We'll get into that as a private investigator to help locate her brother, and that ends up leading us to this Bordello of Blood, as they call it in this movie. Now, Bordello of Blood is one of those Hollywood productions that was just doomed from the start, that was just plagued with production issues, mainly stemming from our two leads. Joel Silver insisted on casting Dennis Miller as the role of this private investigator. Originally, writer and producer A.L. Katz wanted Daniel Baldwin to play the role, which I think would have absolutely killed it. Baldwins were crushing it and in the 90s, and honestly, a Baldwin in that role would have much more fit the vibe rather than square-ass stepdad-looking Dennis Miller. God, this guy was such a douche. After watching this commentary and watching a couple videos about the production, Dennis Miller and actress Erica Alaniak, who we'll get into in a second, really just plagued this movie and just completely hamstringed the production. Dennis Miller didn't even want to do the movie at first. He thought the script sucked. He didn't want to do any of the dialogue, and he said, you know what, you give me $1 million, I'll do your stupid Tales from the Crypt movie. And they ended up up giving him $1 million, but not adding to the budget. They had to slash the budget in certain areas, mainly from the special effects budget, to compensate Dennis Miller's bloated paycheck for this movie, to pay him for a movie he didn't even want to be in the first place. He treated this movie as a joke. He was a big diva on set, not wanting to even read any of his lines. He insisted on improvising pretty much all of his dialogue. He would also have his assistant show up in the morning and say, you know, Dennis Miller's a little tired today. He's gonna have to leave early. All kinds of that shit. Just a complete douchebag. In fact, him and Corey Feldman actually almost came to blows one day on set. I'll link a couple videos down below with some interviews with cast members, including Corey Feldman, talking about what a massive douchebag Dennis Miller was. He was famous at the time for Dennis Miller Live, and he was a comedian. He doesn't really do much anymore. He was in Joe Dirt as well, but he really hamstringed this production by leaving early, improving dialogue, causing reshoots and all kinds of issues on set. He was just a massive douchebag. And then you had Baywatch star Erika Eleniak, who was in some interesting things in the day. I remember watching her on Baywatch in a movie called Chasers, which she was actually really good in. But at the time, she had just quit Baywatch. She was completely trying to change her image, and she wanted to be taken seriously as an actress, which I don't know why you choose a Tales from the Crypt movie, Bordello of Blood, if you're trying to rehab your image. But she did. But 2 days before filming, she decided that she did not want to show up to set whatsoever unless they completely rewrote her part. She refused to show up until they changed her character, which they eventually did. They had no choice. The movie was getting ready to start filming. Originally, apparently, her character was supposed to be a stripper and work at a strip club, and was supposed to be a little bit more sexed up, which is more in line with the roles that she was playing at the time. But she said no, 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 and they rewrote her entire part, which was another big blow to this whole production. A.L. Katz, the producer and writer on this movie, was just pulling his hair out the whole time. If you listen to the commentary track on the Scream Factory DVD with A.L. Katz telling the whole story of the production of this movie, he just had a hell of a time making this movie. This is just one of those cases where you had way too many hands in the pot, way too many cooks in the kitchen. You had executive producers Richard Donner, Joel Silver, and Robert Zemeckis, all executive producers, all hugely powerful at the time, and they're all forcing their input on this little movie, who A.L. Katz already had figured out. He wanted to cast Daniel Baldwin for the private investigator role. He originally wanted to cast Robin Givens as the lead villain role, which eventually went to Angie Everhart, who had never acted in a movie before other than a tiny little bit part in Last Action Hero. She ended up getting the lead role. Richard Donner wanted Corey Feldman in the movie because he was in Goonies, and all the cast was just forced upon the production, and it was just a mess. It's really crazy when you read about how much trouble this movie was to make. Now, I mentioned they had to slash the budget for Dennis Miller to be able to get his big paycheck. Now, most of that money came from the special effects budget, so that really caused a problem for all the special effects, which are supposed to be the biggest part of a horror movie, and especially a Tales from the Crypt movie. In fact, the original special effects artists were overwhelmed and ended up quitting or being unable to do their job. They had to call in the man Todd Masters to come in and finish up all the special effects for the movie, and he did a fantastic job. Todd Masters is a brilliant guy. He's done special effects for tons and tons of movies, but he ended up doing a fantastic job, and there's some really great gore gags and special effects, especially that big finale scene, which is just so much fun with Chris Sarandon and douchebag Dennis Miller with the squirt guns, which reminded me a lot of From Dusk Till Dawn, which came out the same year, 1996. Aside from some casting issues and obvious production issues, the movie is just a blast to watch. There is way more nudity and boobs and gore than I remembered. Some great gags, honestly, including at the beginning of the movie when Angie Everhart takes her tongue and sticks it down that guy's throat and his heart comes popping out of his chest. Corey Feldman gets that big hole in his chest, which is a really great gag. There's some good exploding gags, and there's some really good stuff in this movie. You have a great opening sequence with the Crypt Keeper and William Sadler, who plays the mummy. He was actually made little cameos in several episodes of Tales from the Crypt. Now, not only do you have Corey Feldman, who starred in one of the biggest vampire movies of the 80s, you also have Chris Sarandon, who starred in Fright Night, another big, massive vampire vampire, like iconic vampire movie of the 80s as this reverend, this really sort of cheesy televangelist style reverend who plays guitar and stuff. They actually based his character on disgraced televangelist of the 80s, Jimmy Swaggart, who got caught with a bunch of prostitutes. That guy was a real big piece of shit too.
I have sinned against you, my Lord. Oh, Jesus. And I would ask that your precious blood.
But they based Chris Sarandon's character on that. He seems like a great guy. When you listen to the commentary, writer A.L. Katz had nothing but amazing things to say about Chris Sarandon. They said he was just super professional, came in, did his job, and he gave a great performance in that movie. They actually shot Bordello of Blood as Tales from the Crypt was still in production. I think they were on their last season, which actually they started filming in England on that last season of Tales from the Crypt, but the show was still going strong when they were making these movies. First, a lot of people prefer Demon Knight over Bordello of Blood, but I really, really love Bordello of Blood. Billy Zane is amazing in Demon Knight, but this movie's got something special, probably all the boobs, and I just like Corey Feldman. It's just a really fun movie. But both of these got releases from Scream Factory. I'm not sure if they're still in print, but they did both get really nice collector's editions from Scream Factory. You can find the complete series of Tales from the Crypt. I actually ended up buying this on eBay, all 7 seasons, although I'm about 90% sure this is the bootleg version. You can find them all over eBay, but it's hard to find a genuine edition of the entire series. Most of them are bootlegs, but you can get a nice bootleg, and it's kind of hard to tell the difference, honestly. For like $40, you get all 7 seasons, and they look great, they play great, the menus work. Being that there was so many production issues with this movie, it's kind of surprising we got a movie that works as well as it does. I don't know if its creators and its directors and writers think it turned out all that well, but if you watch it as a fan, the movie is a lot of fun. Although Dennis Miller seems to be a bit of a piece of shit, his performance works for what it's worth. There's some quippy things. There's some pretty cringy one-liners that he shoots off in there, especially that one about it being, this like a bad episode of Tales from the Crypt. He's kind of like, yeah, I don't know, like smelling his own farts a lot in this movie. He just seems like a real arrogant dude, but I don't want to rant about Dennis Miller anymore. All in all, the movie is a lot of fun. I particularly love Corey Feldman and Chris Sarandon's performances. They're great. Corey Feldman is having a blast in this role. He's really, really good in this role with his little tiny sunglasses. Erica Eleniak is doing her thing, trying to be super serious and taken super seriously in Tales from the Crypt, Bordello of Blood. She was good in a movie called Chasers. If you haven't seen Chasers, I suggest that movie. It's a lot of fun. But if you haven't seen Bordello of Blood, I highly suggest checking it out. It's super fun. Tons of boobs, tons of blood, tons of gore. They don't skimp on that, so that's a lot of fun. A lot of those movies at the time sort of skimped on that with a lot of cutaway kills and off-screen gore, but this movie gives you the gore front and center. It's a great little movie. So if you haven't seen it, I highly suggest it. And guys, thank you so much for stopping by to celebrate the 25th anniversary of Bordello of Blood. I think we're done here, guys. Stay weird, always be yourself, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.